Hey, what's up coders? Welcome back to my channel. Today we will see how to add animated charts in your Flutter application, and the plugin that I'm using is charts_flutter plugin. So if you've already watched my Flutter chart video, I had covered how to create staggered grid view, and the content of the grids were a very simple basic representation of your chart, and the plugin that I used in this video was the Flutter Sparkline plugin. And this graph did not contain a lot of detail. It was just a very basic representation of your data. So I had a lot of questions from the subscribers asking me, how do we add the X and Y axis? Well, this library had some limitations, so I thought I'll come up with a video showing you how to add all these X and Y axis details. Also show you the different types of charts that you can create. In combination, also show you how to animate your chart. All right, so as I mentioned, the plugin that I'm using is chart_flutter, and the version is 0.060. So let me show you the details of the plugin. Yeah, this is the one that I'm using, and this is the version, which is the recent and the latest version. So if you click on the GitHub link here, right corner, you would find an online gallery link. I'll also leave the link of this online gallery in the description. Here you can see the kinds of graphs that you could, or charts that you can create using this plugin. So there is definitely a ton of categories, and depending on your use case, you can also use a combination of it. So you have like bar, time series, and also if you click on it, it will show you how to implement it. So this is how I picked up 3 charts from it. So one was the bar, another one was the donut, and the next one was the line chart. So it's a very simple chart. Alright, so before I start with the implementation, let me show you the demo of the UI, where I have a very simple page with a tab bar, and I have used 3 tabs, and each of the tab represents a type of a chart. So the first one is the line, which has the X and Y axis and 3 datas. And if you move on to the donut or pie chart, you could see that it gets animated and it shows the detail, and you could also see that what color represents what unit here. And similar way on the third tab, you could see it's a line chart which is animated, and you can see 3 categories here. One is the year, sales, and department. Instead of tab bar, you could also use horizontal list view or a page view or cards. So definitely you can get creative with your charts. Alright, so moving on to the implementation part. First thing, make sure that you add the plugin details here, and then get your package details here as well. So once you're done with it, then let's see the structure of the page that we are creating. So if you look at the page, it is simple tab view. It's a 3 tab, and each tab contains one kind of chart type. So first we'll concentrate on how to create this donut type. So before that, we need the data container. So well, first thing, I have here a very simple barebone Flutter project, which is the stateful widget with the app bar. So before that, first thing you need is the data container. Now this data container, it could be the data from the backend, or it could be from an API service or anything, or a static data. So for the demonstration purpose, I'm keeping it very simple. So first let's create our data container. Now if you look at the data container here, for the pie chart, I'm using a simple task. So for that, I'm going to create a class which is called task, and inside this I'm going to add few parameters. One is the task itself, and the other property is the task value, and these are basically your graph values. And next I'm going to add a color value also, just to give an extra touch to your graph, and this is uppercase. Okay, so I'm gonna add a constructor which is this task and this task value and this dot color value. So after defining the data container, next we need to define the data points, which is the actual data. So let's define the data points. So before I define the data point, there is another factor that we need to understand, which is called the series. So series is nothing but it's a collection of your individual data points. So I'll define the series and the data point, and then I'll show you how to connect the series with your data point and show you how it gets displayed on your chart. Alright, so first what I'm going to do is in my init state, I'm going to create a function called generate data. Now what this basically does, it generates all your data related to either a donut chart or the line chart or the bar chart. So I'm keeping a separate function just for the generation of data. And now let's define the data generation part. So for that, I'm going to call this function, and here I'm going to define the data. So here we're going to say py data, and it's going to be an array of your data collection. So I'm going to say new task, and I'm going to define a particular task which is like work, and then we have the next value which is the percentage, and then the color. So I'm using custom colors. I think this has to be double. Let's see what's our declaration here. Alright, I see it is a string, so let's change this to double, and there you go. So this way we are going to define the other task details also in it. So let's quickly pick up the task details. So this is my other task details which I am going to add in my chart. So now we have defined the data. Next we need to define the series. So how do we define the series? So series is nothing but a list of type, the one that we have defined. So it's going to be charts dot series task, comma, and the type, which is string in our case, because we are representing few string values. And then we're going to give a name to this series. So I'm just going to name it series by data. Okay, so we have defined, just defined it here. So we will quickly initialize that particular data also. We go to the init state. So we're going to use the same data and say use the same list. So you have created a series by data, which is a series, and then you have generated the data. Alright, so now we have the data, and now we have created the series also. Now we have to ensure that this py data is added inside your series py data. So for that, we will use the generate data method and then copy this series data and then say add. So inside this is where you add all your details of your graph. So the first thing that I'm going to add is the chart series. So I'm going to say charts series, and inside this I'm going to define all my property. So first thing I'm going to say data, and the data is nothing but the py data. Next, you can add your x and y axis detail. So first is the domain fn, and for this you got to say task and give a name for this, which is task, and another one is just underscore. You can just leave that, and this holds my task whichever property. So the property that we use here is, you can choose what you want your x and y axis value. Either you want task or task value. So depending on your use case, you can add those values. Measure fn. So there is another property called as measure fn, and inside this I'm going to add the task values. Moving on to the colors. So the colors is the value that I have used. So I can use the default colors, which is the blue, light blue color, but I'm going to use a custom color. So for that I'm going to use color FN. In order to use the custom colors, you have to say chart color util from dot color, and this is your the one that comes from your data container. So it's task dot color value. And next you can also add another property called ID. And after this, I'm also gonna add a label accessory FN. That is, if you look at the graph, you can see that inside the donut chart, you can see the values here. So if you want, you can add the task name or the task value. I prefer the task value to be inside it. So how do we add that? So that the parameter to be used is label accessory FN, and inside this you gotta add task, and I'm going to say row and then underscore, and this holds the details, which is row dot I think it's my task value. Yes, that's the one. I have all my task value details, and then I'm going to close this. Okay, it has to be enclosed with a single quotes, and then I'm going to give a comma here, and this has to have a semicolon. So I have defined my details here, and then I have defined my series, and inside my series I'm adding my data and the other factors like the X and Y axis if you want for your bar or your line chart, and the color, which is the custom color, the ID, and the detail inside your donut, what you want. So this is how you add your details. Now this is just the data. So the data is available, but you have not added it inside your application. So all my details are inside the series by data. So now I have to add this inside my tab view. So we will see how to add it. Alright, so moving on to the tab section of the UI. It's a simple tab bar view, and inside that I've used a children array, and inside this I'm gonna add my individual charts. So first I'm gonna add the donut chart. So I've just added a padding just to ensure that it gives some spacing around your graph, and then I've added a container, I have centered it, and I've added a column widget. The reason is I wanted a text stating a title for your graph, and then I've added a sized box just to give that spacing, and then I've used an expanded. Now inside this I'm going to add my chart. So I'm going to add the chart details and then explain you what individual property actually represents here. There you go. This is the section of the chart that actually creates the donut. Now, so the first thing what I have done here is I've used chart and a pie chart. So if you want the pie chart, you have to use this, and added my series pie data. Now what is the series pie data? That was the series point that we created in the beginning of the video. So that is the one that actually represents the data. Next I've added the property called animate, so that I could actually get my graph animated, and I've given an animation duration. So this is the section that actually animates your graph. Now this is something extra that I've added. So if you don't want, if you just stick to the series pie data, animate and animation duration, you would get a chart. But I wanted a little more extra so that I could get this details of the chart here. So these points, and how do we control the radius of the circle? It is possible. So to control the radius of the circle, you have to use this one, default renderer. So this property helps you to do that. Label inside your pie chart, you have to use arc label position inside. So when I do that, I would get my details inside the pie. So instead of inside, if I say outside, I would get the details outside. That is, the values representing would be displayed outside the pie chart. So in my case, I'm just going to use inside. Now this section of the UI is the one that actually represents your details of your task. So if you look into the plugin, you would find this. So it's just the details here. So when you do this, you would get your pie chart. So let me quickly build this and show you how it looks. So there you go, the application has built successfully. You can see the pie chart where inside the pie chart details you can see the task value, and here the datum legend values here, and when you load it, it gets animated. Bar chart. So first let's define the container values. So for this I'm using a pollution statistic data. So these values are just some random values that I've picked, nothing specific. So I have used place, year and quantity, and similar way I have defined some data points. So let me quickly get the data point values also. So you can see I've used data 1, data 2 and data 3. And now let's create the series for the bar chart. It's similar like your pie chart. So the only thing is you have to use the corresponding data container name and a different name for this. And then next let's initialize it, and then let's connect the series points and the data points. So for the connection part, you have to just initialize your series data. Alright, so we have defined the data points, we have defined the series data. Now let's see how to connect the series data with your data points. So for that, you are defining the series data. Now the first section that I'm defining here is the purple section. So all the purple section is one series. Next, your green sections are one series, and then your yellow section or the amber color sections are another series. So we're going to define individual series. So here you can see it's similar to your pie series data. The only difference would be it has the domain name same, which is the place, the measure FN, which is the other one, the y-axis, the quantity I have defined. So if you see here, this is the place and this is the quantity. And then I have the data, which is the data 1. So my first array has been picked up here. And then the fill pattern. The fill pattern is how do you want your bars to be, either a solid or a forward hatch. So when I build this, I'll show you what's the difference between solid, and it's just a pattern difference. And then the fill color, what is the color you want the bars to be filled up with. So here I'm using a custom color. So similar way we can add the other two series so that it can pick up the data 2 and the data 3. So I have added 3 series data. So one has connection with data 1, the next has a connection with data 2, and the same series data has a connection with the data 3. So the series data is now a collection of all these 3 datas. Now we have the data, we have to add it in our widget. So how do we do that? So here you can see that it's a tab bar view, and we have already added the pie. So now here we will add our bar chart. So similar way I have used a padding, container, center, column and column so that I can add the text, and the next is the bar chart. So the text is a simple text with some styling. And moving on to the bar chart, and the first property always will be your series parameter. So here in our case it was series data. Then I'm going to say animate true because I want some animation. Next, then I'm adding a bar grouping type so that I get that in a grouped section. If I don't use this property, it will just be a normal bar graphs next to each other, not in a group section. Well, this is called a group section, so where it groups your individual data set values. So this is a very simple one. So let me build this and show you how it looks. Alright, you can see the application has built successfully, and you can see that animation part also appearing. And for a change, as I mentioned, the fill pattern. So if it is solid, you could see the entire color solid. If it is a forward hatch, you could see the stripes. So it's just a pattern difference. So as of now we have added the bar chart. So moving on to the last one, which is the line chart. So let's quickly add the data container and then add the data points and the series points. So for the data container I have used a sales value. For the data points I have used a simple sales data. So let me quickly grab those details here. So this is the first sales point, second and the third. And now I'm going to create the series data, and now inside the generate data we are going to connect the series line data with the individual data points. So let's connect the first one. The series line data the first property, as usual, the data would be your line sales data, so which is the one that I've defined here. So it's going to pick up the first one, and then I've added the X and Y axis with the sales year val and the sales value. So one axis would be your year value, another one is your sales value, and the color, which is going to be your custom color, and an ID for it. Now let me add the other two details, and we'll show you how to add that in your widget. So there you go. So I have added a series line data of 3 sets, and each individual data is different, so that I could get the 3 line graphs and the color. Then moving on to the implementation part, I think this part, yeah. So it's a similar way. It's another container with a column widget where the first one is the text which shows the title of the chart, and then you have chart and line chart. So for the other one it was bar chart and a pie chart. So first property always will be your data, and then I have used default render stack. So this will ensure that it stacks, and it gives you this kind of a representation, that filling and the stack part. And then we need to add the sales department and the year properties. So for that, you need to use the behavior property. So inside this, I'm going to use new chart title, and there the position I'm mentioning whether it's bottom, start or end. So depending on that, depending on your use case, you could actually use the values here. And then I have used animate true and animation duration. So this is your line chart, and let's build this and we'll see how it looks. Alright, there you go. So you can see the line chart with the X, Y and the other side department, and similar way you can see how it animates. So I'm going to show you the animation part of your line chart also. So yeah, that's it for this video, and in this video we saw how to add charts, how to give X, Y details, how to add data, how to get it animated, and we also saw the different types of chart, how to add details inside your pie, or if you want to add some legend details to your graph. And also I'll add all the details of the plugin and the versions in the description. So if you like this video, please give it a like and do subscribe, and if you find this informative, please do share it. Thank you.